My pleasure. Thanks, Tim and David from Chapter 1 for this opportunity. Really appreciate it. Copper is an essential energy metal for the electric vehicle and renewables transformation that's clearly upon us. When I joined Helix in January, I saw an incredible opportunity for exploration growth and a tremendous opportunity for high-grade copper deposits in Australia in and around existing copper mines and production centres. Next, you're a couple of slides ahead of me there, Alex. But if I match slides now, the key elements to the Helix investment proposition really are existing high-grade copper resources within a large underexplored tenement package, and what I think is an aggressive strategy to find more copper. We've had recent exploration success that I'm looking forward to sharing with you, where we've found massive copper sulfides, such as you can see in the picture above. We've got a new management team, and that means new eyes and new energy and a new strategy. And this is all underpinned by a really strong outlook for copper in demand in the long term. Next slide. Our share price is currently around 4 cents, and yes, we've had a bit of excitement that in the last week or so. We've just raised $4 million at 2.7 cents. A week ago, we were 1.4 cents. So it's really amazing what a strong copper intercept can do. The market interest has been intense, and I'm sure that it's nowhere near over. Next slide. We've got a very clear strategy. We are backing ourselves to make major copper discoveries in the Cobar region. This is a really well-credentialed neighbourhood. It's got several copper, gold, and base metal production hubs, as you can see in this slide, owned by Glencore, Eris Resources, Aurelia, and emerging deposits such as owned by Peel and hopefully Helix as well. Note, on this map, our two main tenement blocks, the Colorina project, the tenements on the eastern side, and the Cambellago tenements to the west, and they both sit along major regional mineralized trends. Next slide. This is just an incredible opportunity for discovery here, and it's what I'm trying to capture in this map. We know that copper minerals are conductive, and there are geophysical survey methods such as electromagnetics or EM, which generally finds copper deposits successfully in Cobar. It is a key discovery tool. However, up until early this year, only 20% of our tenements around that CZ deposit that's labelled on the map had any EM coverage. And that was a major gap in our large-scale regional data sets. So in early March, we completed a large-scale airborne EM survey, 2,300 odd line kilometres of work to give first-pass targeting process. And we now have 100% coverage of 120 kilometre strike extent of prospective copper trends. This is a really valuable targeting tool for us. Through that, we've identified 24 high-priority targets across the 3 trends. And with these kinds of data sets, we can now rank and prioritise the targets that we work on. And that means that our dollars and our efforts are focused on the most prospective areas. This has been an incredibly successful exercise, and the team and I are really excited about the planned follow-up work. And that work will occur across the 3 trends that you can see in the picture. That's the Colorina trend with the CZ deposit on the east or the right-hand side, the Rochford trend, labelled number 2, which hosts our Cambellago deposit, and then the earlier stage Mariula trend on the western side. Next slide, please. I'd like to have a closer look now at the Colorina trend and the central zone, or CZ resources, I call it. You can see the deposit there labelled CZ copper deposit at the southern end. That's 2 million tonnes at about 2% copper. However, it sits in an overall 60-kilometre long trend. And just about all of the drilling has been focused in and around that CZ deposit, despite there being some really encouraging geology, soil geochemistry, and geophysics. But now with that recent EM data survey, that whole belt is being lit up. We've got 8 compelling targets, which are north and south of the CZ deposit. And I'll talk about CZ shortly. But if you look to the north there, you look at the north of that colored trend, we have several high confidence EM conductors at an area called Quanda Hermidale. And this is on the same trend as Eris's high-grade Kurrajong and Constellation discoveries. In the past, the company had known that there were some high-grade rock chips and some interesting-looking rocks, but the geos really struggled to get excited or focus more work and activities there. That is until this recent VTEM survey. It just lit this area up with several high-priority conductors, and that area now becomes a compelling focus for us. Or if you look down the southern end of that belt, where we also have distinct subtle EM conductors at an area called Five Ways. And this is just along strike from the Tottenham copper deposits. And this area has had no surface geochemical coverage or other assessment work. So you can see how this regional VTEM survey is really giving us context and enabling us to identify prospective areas. Next slide, please. Now, if we look at the CZ deposit along that colorida trend in more detail, this is a high-grade copper deposit in what we call the fresh sulfide zone, beneath the weathering. And you can see drill intercepts on this picture, 12 meters at 5%, 11 meters at 6.6%. And you notice that consistent trend, that is controlled, or that high-grade trend is controlled by the hinge zone of a regional scale fold. If we go to the next slide, please. So if you've got high-grade copper being accumulated in the hinge zones of these folds, you can see in plan view there, the chute, the high-grade chute plunging off to the southeast. And we've got opportunities to grow that existing 2 million tonnes at CZ by both extensions down plunge from the known hinge-controlled chute, as well as defining and testing additional chutes that are in parallel, as I've shown in those 2 diagrams on the left. There are really strong analogies with the high-grade Constellation discovery of Eris to the north, as well as their Kurrajong and Triton deposits. And it's worth keeping in mind that that area has an overall endowment of around 1.5 to 2 million tonnes of contained copper. Now, that's a really serious regional scale mineralized structure. Next slide, please. And for the geologists among you, if you need any more convincing that there's strong analogies with the Constellation deposit to the north, that's Constellation core in the middle, and 2 examples of our drill core from the CZ deposit on either side. And you can see very similar textures. So there's a really strong analogy there. Next slide, please. I'd now like to move to the west, to the Rochford trend. And this area has never had regional scale EM coverage, and we've now identified 10 high priority targets. Again, we have a mineral resource at Cambellago, and I'll come back to that shortly. But if you look to the north of the Cambellago deposit, which I've labeled there, we have discrete, high confidence EM anomalies from that recent survey near the historical Boppy Broken Hill copper workings. It's another case of interesting rocks, but just not enough compelling evidence to get the geos to focus in on there until the VTEM data. And in a similar situation to the south, where the EM is reinforcing the potential of these prospects that we call Caballero and Biju, where we have done follow-up work in terms of anomalous copper in soils. We found good geology, and we've even done a little bit of scout drilling. So all of these anomalies are being lit up by these discrete conductive bodies, which indicate sulfide copper mineralization, and that's what we want to find. Next slide, please. Now we're looking at the Cambellago deposit in more detail, and this has created a lot of excitement in the share market recently. You can see in that long section view, there's an outline of an inferred 2004 JORC resource of about 1.5 million tonnes at 1.2% copper. And this is centered around a historic working, and it extends for about 400 meters along strike. This project had no work since 2013, and there were untested downhole electromagnetic targets from that time. As well, there are extensional targets to the north, the south, and the west, which we've now identified by the recent VTEM survey, which I'll show you shortly. Now, the market interest is around that we've started drilling in late April. We've drilled 2 holes and we're currently on the 3rd, and you can see those shown on the long section. And I'd now like to go to the next slide and talk about that drilling a little bit more. Before I do that, you'll just notice that picture of drill core on the right-hand side. Well, that's what high-grade copper mineralization looks like. The brassy yellow mineral is chalcopyrite. That's a copper sulfide mineral. I can tell you these kind of intercepts get geologists and even mining engineers very excited. I don't think Andre Labuschagne, the executive chairman at Eris, would mind me sharing that he got a selfie of himself, obviously with a stick of this drill core last week. So it's pretty exciting stuff. If we look at the drill section there, you can see that we've drilled 1 hole, the first one, 40 meters below the base of the previous mineralized envelope into an untested downhole EM target. And we hit 24 meters of disseminated and vein chalcopyrite right on target. And then we followed that hole up and bingo, 30 meters, much stronger chalcopyrite mineralization, including several massive, likely very high grade zones. And then we also had this interesting new zone higher up in the drill hole, which we still have to define. So the next step here is it's really important that we do more downhole EM to understand the potential for further extensions, perhaps get a bit of a handle on that new zone higher in the hole, and vector us toward drilling beneath hole 2 and hopefully chasing this zone further down depth. Next slide, please. And then I said, I was referred earlier how that regional VTEM had lit up opportunities around that Cambellago deposit. And you can see here the anomalies that we've identified to the northeast, the south, and the west. And right now we have a geophysical crew on site doing surface EM work to better define those anomalies. Next slide. So in this presentation, I hope I've given you a sense of how we can very quickly add to the existing copper resources. We are hitting copper, and we've got the tools to find more copper, EM, drilling, and good geological eyes. But also, I hope I've given you a sense of the underexplored nature of this 120 kilometres of prospective copper trends that we have. The team's really excited to get into some of these regional targets and really break open this area for more copper discoveries. I think the short-term price catalysts for our stock will be the results from drill holes 3, 4, and 5, and we can report those visually. And then further extension, and they represent further extensions to the current resource. And I think people will also be interested to see what our downhole modelling tells us in terms of new targets. I think our approach, which is now fully funded, creates a strong pipeline of targets to test. And that creates momentum to news flow, and it also creates expertise in the company for finding more mineralisation. And just to finish off on the next slide, there is an incredible opportunity for new high-grade copper discoveries on our tenements around the Cobar region. And I think given the recent gains in our market cap, I think investors are now only just starting to realise that. We have the funding, we have the targets, we have the drill rigs on site, and we're hitting high-grade copper sulfides, and we've got a work program which will maintain solid news flow to hopefully to the end of the year. The new Helix strategy is all about high-grade copper around Cobar with plenty of work and opportunities to drive further major share price gains. So watch this space, and thank you very much for the time.
Thanks, Mike. Time for a couple of quick questions. A question here, you've got terrific grades in the area. Do you expect to find a cluster of small high grades or bigger tonnage single plays? How do you rank targets to drill?
We rank targets with the sort of the lineup of all of the scientific data that you're looking for, and we have quite a rigorous process. I'm looking, probably given the geological precedents in the area, we're looking for discrete, high-grade structurally controlled deposits, but we are looking for those in clusters. And I think if you look north of our tenements towards what Eris have, that would be a great example of what we're doing.
And you've clearly got the share market excited, management's excited. Have you ever seen any results like this before?
I have, from our neighbours to the north just recently. I mean, they're generating some great drill core, and we're all drilling along the same structures. And I tell you what, the global demand for copper is really strong. So, you know, our neighbour's success is our success.
Excuse my ignorance, but who is your neighbour?
I beg your pardon. Eris Resources, just to the north. Those are those discoveries that I'm comparing us to.
Understood. And just a question here: when can we expect the DHEM results? When is this third diamond drilling commencing?
Okay. Well, the third diamond drill hole, which people are interested in because it's 200 meters away from those holes 1 and 2, that's in progress now. We're only single shifting that rig, and I'm expecting to get some news on that probably mid to late next week. And with respect to the DHEM, that's the downhole electromagnetic survey data, and we're capturing that information at the moment. And I also expect to be able to share that and the implications of it same sort of time frame, mid to late next week.